President Trump again imposed unjustified tariffs on our nation.
Trump's tariffs cast a huge shadow over the federal election. He also threatened Ottawa and the European Union from working together to do what he calls economic harm to the U.S.
The economic relationship between the United States and Canada, once a symbol of close cooperation, is now in turmoil. A new wave of tariffs has sparked an unprecedented diplomatic and economic conflict, and its ripple effects could reshape the future of global trade. Recently, President Donald Trump made a bold move, imposing a 25% tariff on imported cars, which primarily targets Canada's automotive industry. This announcement has sent shockwaves through global trade markets and signaled a dramatic shift in the U.S.'s trade strategy, one that could severely impact the economic relationship that has existed for decades between the two nations. The primary focus of this new tariff policy is on electric vehicle manufacturers, particularly Tesla, among others. The Trump administration argues that these tariffs will boost American manufacturing, but the potential long-term consequences are profound, especially for industries heavily reliant on cross-border supply chains. This tariff policy is not just a matter of protecting domestic industries. It's a direct challenge to Canada, and the economic repercussions could be global. Canada has already signaled its intention to retaliate. The Canadian government, led by Prime Minister Mark Carney, has already begun freezing $43 million in EV rebates for Tesla, signaling the seriousness of this trade dispute. This growing conflict between two closely integrated economies has the potential to disrupt not only the US and Canada, but also the global auto market. This chapter sets the stage for the dramatic developments unfolding between the two countries. When President Trump announced the 25% tariff on imported vehicles, he framed it as a protective measure for the American auto industry, aiming to revive manufacturing jobs in the U.S. The administration's reasoning seems simple enough. By imposing these tariffs, the U.S. would be incentivizing the production of cars within the United States, thus boosting local factories and securing American jobs. But what many failed to consider were the immediate consequences that this decision would have on industries heavily reliant on global supply chains. The U.S. automotive market is one of the largest in the world, with the U.S. importing a staggering 8 million cars annually, valued at $217 billion. The tariffs were initially projected to generate $100 billion in annual revenue for the U.S. Treasury, an attractive figure for a government focused on increasing revenue. However, the tariffs' broader impact will affect every single player in the automotive sector, both in the U.S. and internationally. For U.S.-based automakers like General Motors and Ford, these tariffs have the potential to disrupt the established supply chains, increasing the cost of production. This will likely lead to higher prices for consumers and could reduce sales across the automotive sector. While Trump claims that the tariff will protect American manufacturers, the reality is that higher production costs will spill over to the market, resulting in higher prices and potentially slower sales. After Trump's announcement, the stock prices of GM, Ford, and Stellantis, parent company of Jeep and Chrysler, fell significantly, indicating market unease about the potential economic fallout. In contrast, electric vehicle companies like Tesla and Rivian saw modest gains. Investors appeared to believe that these companies might be better positioned to weather the storm, particularly given the growing demand for electric vehicles and Tesla's role as a market leader. Despite the claim that the tariff would boost domestic production, the rising production costs could drive up vehicle prices across the board, impacting the sales of both traditional cars and electric vehicles. If this trend continues, the sector as a whole could experience a slowdown, putting U.S. manufacturers in a difficult position, especially as competition in the electric vehicle market continues to grow. Canada is not backing down from this challenge. Prime Minister Mark Carney, a key figure in the Canadian government, was quick to convene a cabinet meeting following the announcement of Trump's tariffs. Carney was resolute in his statement that the historically close economic relationship between the U.S. and Canada, based on mutual cooperation and integration, was now effectively over. The policies laid out by Trump had signaled the end of this long-standing partnership, and Carney made it clear that Canada would not tolerate these unilateral actions. In response, Canada began to prepare for retaliation, imposing tariffs on U.S. goods worth approximately $29.8 billion. This retaliatory action serves as a direct response to the 25% tariff on automotive imports announced by Trump. However, this is only the beginning. Experts believe that Canada may take additional measures if the U.S. pushes forward with tariffs on automotive parts in the coming months. This could lead to a further escalation of tensions between the two nations, with Canada making it clear that they would not hesitate to take further action. Carney also emphasized that Canada needs to redesign its economy to insulate itself from these types of unilateral tariffs. The Canadian economy, which has traditionally relied on its proximity to the U.S. and the ease of cross-border trade, now faces a future in which it must diversify and look beyond the U.S. This could include strengthening ties with countries like China, the European Union, and other emerging markets, allowing Canada to remain competitive without relying so heavily on the U.S. market. Carney's statements highlighted a growing shift in Canadian foreign policy, which may no longer view the U.S. as its primary trading partner. As the situation evolves, it remains unclear whether Canada will continue to have a strong trade relationship with the U.S. going forward. For now, Canada's plan is to ensure that its economic interests are protected, regardless of the political and diplomatic fallout. For Tesla, the announcement of U.S. tariffs and the Canadian freeze on rebates represent a perfect storm of challenges. Tesla, once regarded as the undisputed leader in the electric vehicle market, is now facing increasing vulnerability in the face of rising international trade tensions and growing regulatory scrutiny. Canada's decision to freeze $43 million in EV rebates for Tesla is a direct response to dubious claims made by the company regarding last-minute rebate requests. Tesla had submitted thousands of claims just before Canada's zero-emission rebate program expired, raising concerns about the legitimacy of the requests. As a result, Transport Minister Chrystia Freeland ordered that all Tesla vehicles be excluded from future rebate programs. This move will likely have a significant negative impact on Tesla's operations in Canada, as the company relies on these rebates to make its electric vehicles more affordable for consumers. Tesla is now faced with growing challenges, not only in Canada, but also on the global stage. As Tesla's CEO, Elon Musk, continues to make bold political stances, including his public support for Trump, he has attracted the attention of foreign regulators. This alignment with Trump has raised concerns among international policymakers, some of whom are considering stricter regulations on Tesla's operations in their countries. This, combined with Tesla's mounting competition from traditional automakers like Ford, GM, and Volkswagen, as well as Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers like BYD, has placed immense pressure on the company. Tesla's stock prices have already shown signs of vulnerability, falling by up to 5.4% amid concerns over the growing trade tensions. Investors are increasingly worried that Tesla's dominance in the electric vehicle market could be challenged as competition intensifies from newer players. This, along with regulatory challenges and a volatile political climate, means that Tesla's future in both North American and international markets is uncertain. Trump's tariffs on Canadian automobiles have not only shaken the U.S.-Canada trade relationship, but have sent shockwaves through global markets. Countries around the world are now watching closely, concerned about the broader implications of the U.S.'s unilateral trade policies. These policies could have far-reaching consequences on the global supply chain and the international automotive market. Brazil's President Claudia Sheinbaum expressed her concern about the U.S.'s protectionist approach, stating that these measures could have serious repercussions on free trade and weaken multilateral trade agreements. Sheinbaum fears that the U.S.'s actions could trigger a global trade war, potentially causing significant economic harm to developing nations that rely on open markets to maintain growth. In Europe, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen lamented the U.S. decision, pledging that the EU would take all necessary measures to protect consumers and businesses within its borders. The EU has long been a proponent of free trade and open markets, and Trump's move is seen as a direct threat to that system. The EU's stance is a clear indication that Europe will not remain passive as the U.S. moves forward with these tariffs. The European automotive industry, which is deeply integrated into global supply chains, is also watching the situation closely and is prepared to act to protect its interests. Finally, Hildegard Müller, head of the German Automotive Industry Association, issued a statement warning that these tariffs would have a devastating impact on the global automotive supply chain. The effects would not only be felt in the US and Canada, but would also ripple out to the entire global industry, particularly in Europe, where automakers like Volkswagen and BMW have significant production networks. Müller cautioned that the tariffs could result in slower economic growth and could undermine the prosperity of all nations involved in the global automotive market. As tensions rise and countries react to these new tariffs, it becomes clear that global trade is entering a period of instability, and the economic consequences could be far-reaching. In the face of President Donald Trump's recent trade measures, Europe stands at a pivotal crossroads, balancing the pursuit of fair trade with the imperative to safeguard its economic interests. The European Union, EU, comprising nations with robust industrial and technological sectors, views these tariffs as a direct challenge to its market integrity and competitiveness. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has articulated a firm stance, emphasizing that while Europe seeks cooperation, it is prepared to act collectively if provoked by US tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. Scholz's remarks underscore Europe's readiness to defend its economic sovereignty against what it perceives as unjustified trade barriers. The EU's approach is multifaceted, involving both diplomatic engagement and strategic planning. Maros Šefčovič, the EU's trade commissioner, has actively sought to avert the implementation of tariffs deemed harmful to European industries. His meetings with U.S. officials, including Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer, reflect the EU's commitment to dialogue and negotiation. Despite these efforts, the outcomes remain uncertain, with the U.S. administration maintaining its stance on the proposed tariffs. In anticipation of potential trade conflicts, the EU is formulating retaliatory measures aimed at counterbalancing U.S. tariffs. These measures are carefully calibrated to target specific U.S. exports, particularly in the services sector, including technology and digital services. By focusing on services, the EU aims to leverage its strengths and address the U.S.'s significant trade surplus in this domain. This strategy not only seeks to neutralize the impact of tariffs, but also to send a clear message about Europe's resolve to protect its economic interests. The EU's readiness to respond is further exemplified by its consideration of well-calibrated retaliation measures. These measures are designed to mirror the U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum, ensuring that any response is proportionate and targeted. By aligning its counter-tariffs with those imposed by the U.S., the EU seeks to maintain the balance of power in international trade relations and uphold the principles of fairness and reciprocity. However, Europe's response is not solely focused on retaliation. It also emphasizes the importance of finding common ground. Chancellor Scholz has expressed openness to compromise, highlighting Europe's preference for cooperative solutions over escalating trade disputes. This willingness to engage in constructive dialogue reflects Europe's broader commitment to multilateralism and the preservation of a rules-based international trading system. The unfolding trade tensions between the US and Europe serve as a stark reminder of the complexities inherent in global trade relationships. As both sides navigate this challenging landscape, the outcomes will have far-reaching implications not only for their economies, but also for the global trading system. The ability to balance assertiveness with diplomacy will be crucial in determining whether these tensions escalate into a full-blown trade conflict or evolve into an opportunity for reforming and strengthening international trade norms. In the evolving landscape of international trade, the European Union, EU, finds itself at a strategic juncture, responding to the U.S. administration's threats to impose tariffs on a range of goods, including steel, aluminum, and automobiles. The EU's approach is characterized by a blend of proactive diplomacy, strategic planning, and a steadfast commitment to defending its economic interests. Central to the EU's strategy is the engagement of Maros Šefčovič, the EU's trade commissioner, who has undertaken direct discussions with U.S. trade officials. These talks aim to avert the implementation of tariffs that the EU deems harmful to its industries. Despite these efforts, the U.S. administration's stance appears unyielding, prompting the EU to prepare for potential retaliatory measures. The EU's preparedness extends to the formulation of counter-tariffs, strategically designed to target U.S. exports, particularly in the services sector. This focus arises from the U.S.'s significant trade surplus in services with the EU, making it a logical focal point for any retaliatory actions. By concentrating on services, the EU seeks to apply pressure where it is most impactful, aiming to influence U.S. policy decisions. In parallel, the EU is exploring avenues for compromise, seeking to balance assertiveness with diplomacy. This approach reflects a desire to resolve trade disputes amicably, while ensuring that the EU's economic interests are protected. The willingness to engage in dialogue underscores the EU's commitment to maintaining a stable and cooperative transatlantic relationship. The EU's response is also informed by broader strategic considerations, including the need to reduce dependency on external sources for critical materials. Initiatives aimed at enhancing the EU's critical minerals sector are part of a long-term strategy to achieve greater technological sovereignty and competitiveness. However, these efforts face challenges, including competition from countries like China and the complexities introduced by U.S. trade policies. As the situation develops, the EU's ability to navigate these challenges will be crucial. The outcomes of these trade tensions will not only affect the EU and U.S. economies, but also have significant implications for the global trading system. The balance between confrontation and cooperation will determine the trade tensions between the U.S. and Canada are far from over. In fact, they are likely to escalate further as Canada prepares its retaliatory moves, and Tesla finds itself at the center of these economic battles. The global auto market is evolving, and Tesla's position as the leader of the electric vehicle revolution is increasingly uncertain. This ongoing trade dispute highlights the fragility of international relations in an era of protectionism and global supply chains. As China, Mexico, and the European Union take note of the growing U.S. tariffs, it will be interesting to see how countries around the world respond to these shifting dynamics in the automotive industry. Stay tuned for more updates as we continue to analyze how this trade war unfolds and what it means for the future of global trade.